Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm privileged to welcome a communications consultant from Bahrain, Noof Khonji, to our show. Noof, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Noof is the director, POP Innovation House. She's the Director of Innovation at ThinkFarm ME. And as I mentioned earlier, she's a communication and innovation consultant. So Noof, what would you say are three key milestones in your career or your life?
So I actually graduated with a BS in interior design. So I had nothing to do with communications initially. But what I found out was that when I came back to Bahrain and began work, what really kind of drove me was the concept development aspect. So I thought to myself, if I really like this, where can this kind of branch out and lead to? And I took a leap of faith and jumped into advertising shortly after I began work as an interior designer, and started learning about kind of the relationship between human beings and the things that they interact with and how they affect them. So that was something, I think that was one of the kind of leaps that I took, which started out my career. And then when I left, and I really wanted to, I worked for 3 years in advertising initially. And then I started kind of getting deeper and deeper into, again, what was my passion, which was, human behavior and interaction and the semiotics of things, So I started looking into innovation. So how do people come up with new ideas? What's the process? Is there a process? Can you kind of help individuals, get to where they need to get to? And that led me to my master's. I moved to London to do my master's degree in innovation management.
Okay.
And when I moved, I said, I'm never going back to Bahrain. I told myself, this is it. I don't want to return. I want to kind of continue in a different world and on a different platform. And the more so I began, of course, I did my master's, then I obviously moved to London, started working there. And the more I did, the more I studied what I was studying and the more I kind of dug deeper into that, I thought to myself, the best place for me to create impact, positive impact, was to go back to my own country and work there. So again, it was another kind of, okay, I have to kind of get myself, push myself towards something that I wasn't kind of looking at, I guess, in my career. And I moved back to Bahrain, and it's been a very interesting ride. So it's just been like, looking at communications, looking at how, culture really affects communication and how you interact and develop your idea. And then from here, it took me to, so I've always had a passion for arts and like the creative environment. And then the third kind of milestone, which happened recently, was getting to work on the development of a national plan for the creative industries in Bahrain. So on a very large scale, really, driving that. So I think those three, I guess.
Fantastic. In fact, I think your third milestone will probably help you to leave a really big mark on Bahrain.
I hope so.
Fantastic.
That's the plan.
Fantastic. So Noof, let's talk about communication and innovation. Tell me about the kind of work you're doing, with maybe an example.
So the thing that we do specifically in ThinkFarm is we do two things. We do communication strategy development, which has a lot to do with how to create your brand, how to reflect yourself as a company, how to kind of integrate key values that you believe in within a corporation, and really kind of helping our partners and clients implement that throughout all of their channels. And then there's another aspect, which is the exciting kind of part of it, which has to do with innovation management, which is if someone comes to you with an idea, how can you plan to implement this idea in a way where it is successful wherever it is?
Okay.
And the type of work that we do it kind of falls between those two.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So for someone who has studied in London, as someone who's building brands, and obviously you're working with local companies as well as international companies, what would you say is required to build a successful brand in the GCC?
I think it applies to all.
I agree.
I think what is key and really important is that you really need to understand how humans behave. We are human beings.
Correct.
And our behavior, it's very interesting for someone to sit and just observe. It has nothing to do with affecting that, and then really realizing, what could you do to elevate that relationship? What could you say to create something out of essentially nothing? I mean, our brands are actually products or services, but they're not humans. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to inject that humanity in there.
Correct.
So it's very interesting to see and observe. I would say human behavior. But I might be biased because that's my passion, so I'm not sure.
Correct. But I have traveled quite extensively all over the Middle East, and culturally, countries are very different.
Yeah, that's true.
So when you plan a communication campaign, my question to you is, how does culture impact communication?
It's a key driver. It's a key driver and barrier, I would say. So you need to understand how to navigate, and that's why research and understanding and ethnographic research is really important, because you need to understand what moves this individual.
Correct.
What holds them back. It's very important. I would say the nuances are where you would find success or failure. It's that kind of sensitive. And with globalization...
So give me an example, with any one product. I don't want names, but for example, when I was launching a brand, in Saudi and compared to UAE, it was very, very interesting to note that, the signages in Saudi are all at the level of the car window.
True.
So that they could be seen by the people driving in cars. So I'd love to get some kind of an example from you.
Yeah, I had to deal with. We had a client of ours that deals with sanitary ware, sanitary pads, and it's a very sensitive subject.
Absolutely.
And the way we had to communicate, for example, between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, or even the UAE, differed completely to they're all different. So, for example, in Bahrain, the language that we could use was a bit more, I would say, clear. In Saudi Arabia, everything had to be censored. So we had to kind of think of different ways through the actual photo shoot to demonstrate something to a female audience that was essentially not allowed in the past to be even plastered on outdoor advertising. So it was a language thing. So it's very different. And then for the UAE, it was completely diverse in terms of communication. And again, the language had to change. Even the visuals had to change.
Very interesting. Which means that you must have got a team of people who are constantly following up and understanding how cultures are changing across the entire GCC.
Yeah, I think it's also with the new changes politically and socially. There's a rise of socially aware individuals, politically aware individuals, and they want to be spoken to as if they're not commodities. So again, there's a and honestly, without my team, I would not be able to do anything.
I agree. Which then brings me to a follow-on question, that in the digital world, and you are probably a product of the digital world, where you're probably much younger and so on. I have two related questions. One is, how do brands handle the digital world? And second, how do countries' boundaries handle communication digitally?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because culture, like I said, it's an opportunity and a barrier as well.
Okay.
So you really have to be flexible as a brand. And what I've seen is that there's a rise of almost like a global type of language that's being created, especially with the younger generation. So someone from Bahrain, they understand or have experienced things in the digital world as someone in, for example, North America or Brazil or India.
Correct.
So there's a mindset that's being created that's almost a bit like a global mindset that's being advanced.
Correct.
And I think that's actually interesting to see, because I was at the kind of cusp. So I was there before the digital world, and I'm seeing it right after.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just very interesting because even brands now have to take a look at dissecting and segmenting their messages in so many ways, or finding a common ground that everyone relates to. And that to me is the more human element that brands are injecting. So at a human level, something that doesn't require or isn't affected by geography, where can you connect with your audience?
Very interesting. And especially for global brands that you must be working with, the communication strategy has to also be what the international owner of the brand wants.
That's true. So it's again the balance between the essence of the brand and not losing the essence of the brand, and segmenting something that can be digestible by anyone. And this is where your brand foundations are important. Your pillars, your beliefs, your values, because that's what essentially could develop a relationship with someone who's based anywhere.
Okay. And now if you look at this generation, the earth now belongs to the millennials and the Gen Zs, who've got a very different approach, and I believe the young people will inherit an earth that we will leave behind, and they have to make a lot of changes to it, which they are.
Yeah.
What, according to you, as a communication and innovation consultant, are the millennials and the Gen Zs doing to brands, and how are they accepting the messages?
They're more demanding. They're definitely more demanding. They're definitely more curious. They're not taking things at face value. They're a smarter, I would say they're very smart,
correct,
woke generation. And they're not they're not going to, they question a lot, which is their right, and you as a brand have to answer those questions. They're provoking brands that usually the position of a brand a while back was, don't get involved in politics, don't get involved in societal kind of issues, don't you are a brand and you're there to sell things, you're not there to be part of someone's lifestyle. And that has definitely changed, especially with the Gen Zs and millennials. You're looking at an environment where you have to speak up and you have to make change
Very
as a
interesting.
brand.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So one more question on millennials and to a marketer or a communication expert.
Yes.
Are you seeing the same degree of loyalty to brands in the millennials and the Gen Zs as I used to see in people of my generation?
Loyalty, it has to be earned. I think that's the biggest difference with the new generations. With me, for example, I didn't have a choice. I had two, for example, brands, and I had to pick which one I liked more. For example,
Yes.
Coke or Pepsi. But now, because of this, the environment that we're in, from an economic and a social standpoint, they have a lot of choice.
Correct.
And you need to stand out, and you need to relate to them in a way that they won't drop you, because it's a sensitive relationship now.
Very interesting.
So
again, now when you look at the overall organization that you have created in Bahrain, and you're working with sensitive brands and in a large region, what would you say are the core values you believe in?
collaboration, curiosity, always be curious, and definitely accountability.
Okay, accountability to the brand owner or the customer?
I think accountability to the customer and accountability to yourself.
Okay.
If you say something, or if you represent something, then you need to take it to heart and implement it truthfully and ethically.
Okay.
So,
And one more question on communication. You've studied in the UK. You must have worked there as well.
yeah.
What, according to you, are the differences that you perceive in a communication strategy for a brand in the GCC versus Europe?
It's the way you communicate, the methods of communication, and the language that you use. So, for example, in Saudi Arabia, the digital penetration is massive. The communication is not as you can't be as blunt as you want to be. However, what's coming out of that are comedians and individuals, influencers that have found a way to kind of create a satire of real situations that again relate to the Saudi population in general, and they found success in that. And that's what brands also have to do, and then, as opposed to, for example, Europe, and it's much more clear cut and much more straightforward, and more of an experiential, I would say, drive there. So it's a bit different, yeah.
Very, very interesting. I mean, it must be quite a challenge to be able to work first across so many different countries, so many cultures. And I can see you're doing a great job at it. So Noof, I'm going to move to the next segment of our conversation, which is some questions for you personally.
Sure.
As you look back, for someone who did interior design and then moved away from that into advertising, communication, and as you look back and as you look at all the stuff you will do ahead, at this stage of your life, what does success mean to you?
So this is actually a very tough question.
That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. I think success to me is really leaving something, don't know what it is yet, but leaving something that individuals can benefit from, and take it upon themselves and kind of change it. So for me, success is not creating a name just for myself. It's creating positive impact that trickles down. And can be kind of extended by whoever.
Amazing. So leave an interesting legacy.
I hope so. That's the plan.
Okay. And a follow-up question to that, Noof, is you keep pushing yourself to do so many interesting things. Who or what inspires you?
People.
Mhm.
I think people inspire me. Conversations inspire me. Experiences inspire me. Travel. And I think that is really the source of innovative thought. It's the source of connection. It builds your own story for me. And those two, I think, those two things are the things that inspire me most. So right now with COVID, for example, I am like raring to leave and like travel.
Imagine. Yes.
Yeah.
We all are hoping that we'll all be able to fly out of our countries, because I don't think anyone has stayed at home for so long, you know.
That's true. That's true.
Very nice. So my next question to you is that if you, Noof, were a role model to millions of children who closely followed you and your life choices, what is the one thing you would change in yourself?
Again, a very tough question.
It is.
You know, I think I would risk a bit more. I think I would really, you know, push myself, especially when I was younger. I'm still young, I hope.
You are.
But I mean, when I was in my 20s, I think I was afraid. The fear was there. But essentially now, you know, when you've taken so many risks and pushed yourself into the more uncomfortable situations, this is where you grow. So I think, yeah, I would definitely be a bit more risky.
Terrific, terrific. So I have time for two more questions for you. My next question is on failure. And I've got a new book coming out on failure also. And I've often said, most parents in Asia don't teach children it's okay to fail. It's always come first, go to the head of the line, etc., etc. Yet we fail and we learn. My question to you, Noof, is what have been some of your learnings from your mistakes?
It's the same in Bahrain. So failure is not. It's you know, it's not something that's common.
Correct.
And not something that's talked about. At least it's not something that's like part of our conversation. If I was going to the three, I think, let's see, one of the most important lessons for me is always, I'm a firm believer that if something is not for you at that time, it will never come to you at the wrong time. So, you know, search, seek, drive yourself, push yourself, but if it's not meant to happen, it won't happen.
Correct.
So you have to look at the silver linings, and it's very difficult, you know, especially when I was younger, to look at that and say that was a lesson. You know, I need to move forward and take what I can as learnings from that. And it's kind of a train of thought, like, okay, it's, you know, it's not there, but there must be something good that will come out of it. And so that's what I've been training myself to do, because not everything you want to get.
Well said, well said, well said. Noof, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I wish you lots of success.
Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the brand called You Videocast and Podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.